What's going on, everybody? We got some Guns N' Roses news today, so let's get started with the fact that the Guns N' Roses tour is making a ton of money. You guys already knew that, but Forbes did up another article titled Guns N' Roses Makes Big Bucks with New Leg of Reunion Tour. So as you guys know, they dominated 2016. They were the top grossing tour for the year, and they rightfully should have been. So the first half of the tour, if you look at their North America shows and their full runs in Latin America, was a massive success. They sold over 2 million tickets in total. And as you guys know, the band primarily played stadiums, and every single show in Latin America they played, they sold out. And that's pretty typical because rock and metal have sold really well in Latin America, and there's a really rabid fan base for that kind of music. And then, as you guys know, the tickets for the second batch of shows in the UK and Europe, as well as North America, went on sale, and the demand is quite high. Over 1 million tickets were sold just in the first day. Last month, Guns N' Roses topped Pollster's global concert income chart. They took in a stunning $5.5 million per show on average, and the average ticket price for their shows were $117, the highest of any acts on the list. So let's go on to our other Guns N' Roses news for the day. So we have another anniversary for Guns N' Roses. November was a busy month for anniversaries. We had Live Era anniversary, we had Spaghetti Incident anniversary, and now we have the 30-year anniversary of Guns N' Roses' first official album, I guess you could say, Live Like a Suicide. So legend tells us that Guns N' Roses began their march towards global domination with Appetite for Destruction. But for those of you who may not know, just a few months earlier, Guns put out a little taster album called Live Like a Suicide. It was a 4-track EP which arrived in 1986, and it's what's said to have captured. It was said to have been captured in a Guns N' Roses concert. But some people, are a little skeptical. Was it? So let's talk a little bit about the album. So since signing their deal with Geffen Records, Guns N' Roses had been searching for a manager before eventually settling on Alan Niven, as well as producers to help record their debut album. And at one point, Guns N' Roses recorded a bunch of demos at the famous Sound City Studios, which Dave Grohl did a documentary on a couple of years ago. They recorded at Sound City with Nazareth guitarist Manny Charlton overseeing the proceedings. A little later, they linked up with Spencer Proffer, who's been associated with the band Wasp, Quiet Riot, and Tina Turner at Pasha Studios in Hollywood. And progress was really slow, and Geffen Records was really losing their patience. So they had found Alan Niven, and Alan Niven came up with a solution to the dilemma. At least according to Slash's autobiography, Alan thought it was essential for us to keep getting some product out while we still had a strong buzz in the industry. It would keep the excitement alive while we recorded our full-length album, the guitarist wrote. So Guns N' Roses decided to release an EP on Geffen's financed imprint of their own invention. So they would release it as like an indie record or on an indie label, but the label was owned by Geffen Records, and the label they came up with was called Uzi Suicide. And the EP that they released, Live Like a Suicide, was actually just 4 demos that were basically untouched, and they'd basically been playing those songs since their first rehearsal. So the demos included Mama Kin, Rose Tattoo's Nice Boys, and 2 of their own songs, including Move to the City and Reckless Life. Even back then, of course, guys, there was actually clues that this album was not actually recorded live, beginning with the full-fledged horn section blaring away throughout Move to the City, and then in the actual title, there's a question mark, quotation mark, and @ strategically placed within the EP's title. So how did Guns N' Roses get the audience reaction, you guys might wonder? Duff actually explained that the crowd noise was a swipe from the Texas Jam. It was a famous 70s mega festival. Basically, he wrote in his autobiography, "We thought it would be funny to put a huge stadium crowd in the background." He wrote in his autobiography, "It's so easy." At a time when we were lucky to be playing to a few hundred people. Live Like a Suicide was subsequently pressed up and released in a limited run of only 10,000 vinyl and cassette copies. Most future Guns N' Roses fans wouldn't even know of its existence until 2 years later, when these 4 recordings were reissued in a combination with 4 other acoustic tracks that made up GNR Lies. So, of course, once the new recordings from Guns N' Roses became less frequent than sightings of the Loch Ness Monster, Live Like a Suicide became increasingly prized by collectors. What they discovered was a group of early songs that, despite the tact on audience, still very much hold up. They're raw, I guess Slash concluded in his autobiography, but if you ask me, they still sound pretty effing good. So if you guys want to read the entire article that Ultimate Classic Rock did, I pretty much just read it verbatim for you. I've linked to it down below. Let me know, what is your favorite song off Live Like a Suicide? I really like Nice Boys. I think that's a great cover. I'd like to see them maybe bring it back in their live shows. I know Axl's played it a few times over the years. He played it when, Duff had rejoined Guns N' Roses for a couple songs in 2010. So let me know down below in the comment section. Let's move on to our other Guns N' Roses news. So, if you guys watched my video yesterday, you'll know that Richard Fortus just got married. And somebody on the GNR subreddit dug up an article from 2003. It was basically published in the New York Times. It basically profiles Richard Fortus at that time in his life. It's called Habitats, Grand Street, Lower East Side Rock Musician City Paradise. So it basically follows Richard Fortus around as he was trying to buy his first home in New York City with his then girlfriend. Now, this girlfriend wasn't the girl he married yesterday in the news, but it's interesting how much he paid for, his first apartment in New York City. It was under $400,000, and I've never lived in New York City, but I've just heard the rent is ridiculous. So it basically talks about, the place he's living in, how much he paid for it, what kind of place were they looking for. It's kind of an interesting read. I've linked to it down below if you guys want to go check it out. And then the final piece of news is that Duff McKagan was actually playing a benefit show recently. So they did a benefit show for Dave Rosser, who is a member of the Gutter Twins, Twilight Singers, and Afghan Wigs. He has a form of inoperable cancer, so they played a benefit show earlier this week. And Duff was joined by former Screaming Trees and Queens of the Stone Age singer Mark Lanegan, and they performed the GNR classic, It's So Easy. So I've linked to their performance down below. They were also joined by Josh Homme as well, who did a number of songs, including a couple numbers from Them Crooked Vultures, which is a band that features Jean-Paul Jones from Zeppelin and Dave Grohl of the Foo Fighters. So if you guys want to go see some of those other performances, I've linked to the article down below. That basically does it for today's Guns N' Roses news. Thanks for watching, guys. And as always, make sure you subscribe for the latest Guns N' Roses news. Take care.